President Trump is scheduled to meet with his National Security Council today, just days after saying U.S. troops could leave Syria very soon. That apparently comes, though, as a surprise to U.S. defense officials who tell CNN they've been working on plans to send more troops to Syria. Joining me now is retired Rear Admiral John Kirby, CNN military analyst, former State Department spokesman, and former Pentagon press secretary. So what's your take on this? We know there's this meeting today, obviously, with the National Security Council, and this large disconnect between what we're hearing from the president and what defense officials are working on.
So what today is a National Security Council meeting, which means that the president will be presiding over it. They're going to discuss Syria policy and strategy. I think that's a healthy thing. You always want to dip your toe in that stream and check and see how your strategy's doing. I think that the State Department and the Pentagon, I hope anyway, will have some tough words in terms of what they see as the potential prospects for a precipitous pullout of all troops from Syria in the very near future. And the State Department, too, is invested in this because the president is now threatening to hold up stabilization funds. This is money that the U.S. provides to local communities after ISIS has been kicked out that they need for security, for governance, for services. All that's really important to try to eliminate the ungoverned spaces and the safe havens that ISIS can still find in Syria. You know, Secretary Mattis talked about the strategy not being one of attrition, which he blamed the Obama administration for pursuing, but one of annihilation. In other words, we're going to take ISIS completely off the map. Well, they're not completely off the map. They have been severely damaged in Syria and Iraq, of course, but they're still there, and they can still reconstitute if there's a precipitous pullout of U.S. troops anytime soon.
So as that gets worked out, there is also the question about the messaging that we see here, not just to the U.S. military, but obviously to the world, to our allies. I want to get your take on this. Michael Gerson writing in the Washington Post, the final victory of Iran, Russia, and Assad would send a number of clear messages: that mass murder works, that the use of chemical weapons works, that the forced starvation of civilians works, that the rules of war and condemnations by the United States can be ignored with impunity. And the slow motion betrayal of Syria has sent a message to every refugee I met and every potential friend of our country. It can be dangerous to trust in America. Is that what's really at stake here? Trust in this country?
It's one of the things at stake. That's a very eloquent way of putting it. Mr. Gerson did a nice job with that. I think that is certainly one serious outcome of a continued sort of muddling Syria policy and no clear direction on where we're going. And look, I mean, Syria was a mess even before Trump took office, and the Obama administration struggled to get things right as well. So this is a long-standing problem. This distrust in America goes back quite a few years, since basically the onset of the Civil War. But Erica, one of the things that I hope they do talk about today in this NSC meeting is a diplomatic strategy going forward. The U.S. troop presence there is all about getting rid of ISIS. It's never been about getting involved in the Civil War, and I think everybody understands and appreciates that. But what, under President Obama, we did try, when I worked for Secretary Kerry, was a very robust effort at U.S. leadership of a diplomatic process to try to get both sides of this conflict to the table and work out a peaceful, stable future for Syria that is decided by the Syrian people. This administration, under President Trump, has basically ignored that process altogether and handed over leadership of it to Russia, who obviously doesn't have the best interests of the Syrian people at heart. So what I really hope they talk about, in addition to troop presence and the counter-ISIS fight, is a path to get back onto some sort of political outcome and some sort of diplomatic future here, diplomatic process to develop a better future for the Syrian people.
You brought up Russia, and I do want to ask you quickly about this. President Trump and Vladimir Putin, we had heard, talked about a possible meeting now at the White House. Yeah. The White House says it was a casual mention. Is there any benefit, though, that you see to the president and Vladimir Putin meeting stateside in the U.S.?
Not right now. Look, I'm always about bilateral discussions, and the U.S.-Russia relationship has a long way to go to improve, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with the two heads of state talking and having a dialogue, but now's not the time for that. President Putin is finally starting to feel the sting of his overreach here with this chemical agent attack in the UK. The international community is aligned against him. Many countries have expelled diplomats. He's starting to feel that pressure and that isolation in ways that he hasn't felt in many recent years. And I think it's important for him to continue to feel that. Look, he is turning Russia into a pariah state, against the will of many Russians, I would add. And now is not the right time for the President of the United States to reward him for this incredible, criminal, egregious behavior by sitting down and talking to him one-on-one. At some point in the future, obviously, yes, but now's not the right time.
Rear Admiral John Kirby, always appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Thank you, Erica.